Hey, everybody. It's another weekly webinar with me, Jeannie Walters, and experienced investigators. This is our Ask Me Anything weekly series. This week, we're going to be talking about the right way to use AI, artificial intelligence, in your customer experience program. And so, as we get started today, first of all, we always love to hear where you're joining us from. We often have people from around the world, and that's really exciting to see. So go ahead and tell us in chat where you're from, where you're joining us from, and if you have any weekend plans. We're here on Thursday this week because it is the Independence Day, 4th of July holiday here in the United States this weekend. So a lot of people have tomorrow off. And we would also love to know, have any fun weekend plans, or many of us are still trying to stay home and all of those things. So maybe not what we usually do, but trying to do a little cookout with your family, anything like that, let us know. So it looks like we've got some people coming in here from all over, which is super fun. And let me sorry, I just lost my button. Here we go. Okay. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jeannie Walters. I've had about 20 years of experience in customer experience and really have done a lot of training and workshops and speaking and consulting with all sorts of different organizations. If you are looking for something to do this weekend, I was going to say fun. It would be fun. It would be valuable, I hope. I have 4 courses on LinkedIn Learning, so you can check those out. And we have a link that you can use to get 30 days free if you don't have a LinkedIn Learning membership. The courses are on how to create a positive customer experience, journey mapping, a case study in journey mapping, as well as service blueprinting. So if any of that interests you, go ahead and check that out. And it looks like we have that in the banner there too for you. So if you want to join us weekly, please do so. You can actually get reminders for these webinars at bit.ly/cxweekly. That's bit.ly/cxweekly. And like always, we're here today to answer your questions. So I'm going to go through just a little bit of content to get the conversation started, but you don't have to stay on AI if you have a burning question that you want to ask me. So feel free to drop those questions in the chat and we'll get to as many of those as we can. We usually get to all of them live. If you're watching the replay, feel free to go ahead and drop in questions and I will do my best to answer those as well. And like every week here, we have David to join us and to help facilitate. So there's David. How's it going?
Hello, it's going well. And I'm just watching the responses come in here. We've got Jose from Mexico. We've got Karina from Ireland. Heather saying, good to see you again, Heather, saying she's in Montreal, but wishing us a happy Independence Day. Thank you for strengthening Canada-US relations. Tyler says, where I am doesn't matter. I exist only to count down the hours to when Hamilton drops on Disney Plus.
Oh, I'm right there with you.
Tyler, we know what you're doing this weekend. We also already know that you're in Colorado. We've been through this, Tyler. We've got Mia. She says, hi, lady. Joelle in London. South Africa. We've got Denver. We've got Colombia. And Florida as well. So all over the place. Rakesh adds, he really loves the course on LinkedIn. So that's great. And he's already got a question for us. So we'll save that for the Q&A. In the meantime, Jeannie, shall we get to the presentation?
Let's go. Yeah. Well, I'm really excited that so many of our Friday regulars joined us on a Thursday. So thanks for sticking with us. It occurred to me after we scheduled these for Fridays that this might happen because sometimes we have long weekends or holidays or things like that. And the beauty is we can do this. We can just switch and you guys come along. So thank you for being here, everybody. So, when we talk about AI, a lot of times our brains go directly to chatbots. And I wanted to share a story that I'm sure many of you can relate to because recently I was trying to get an answer from my bank. There was a fee on my statement that I didn't recognize. And so I went to the website and because of, everybody going through what we're going through around the world, but especially here in the United States with the small business loans and things like that, they basically said, hey, we are really swamped on the phone right now. If you can use these other options, please feel free to do so. And I thought, okay, this is an easy question. What does this fee mean? Seems straightforward. So I went to the chat and started typing in these questions. And of course, had to verify who I was and my account and, all of those personal identity things. Totally understand that. Went through, and this bot kept trying to tell me about their great interest rates for personal savings loans. And this was for my business banking account. So I kept trying to explain, no, I don't need that right now. I'm trying to figure out, what does this service fee mean? And every time I asked that question, it's like you could hear the springs and things kind of break in the background. It seemed to stump the bot. So eventually, I just tried to do what we as customers have been trained to do, which is type in words that I thought would get me somewhere. I started typing in agent, I started to type in human, operator, all those different things. And finally, I had a real person join me on the chat. And even though it was within the same chat, I still had to verify everything. I had to go through, I had to ask my question again. And then it was this awkward dance of, are you there? Where I kept asking, okay, are you there, person? And every once in a while, she would respond and say, yes, I'm still here, working on it. Wait a few more minutes, see no activity, and think, okay, are we cut off now? Did we lose the connection? Because I'm sure this has happened to you guys too. Sometimes you lose the connection in a chat and you don't even know. So it was so frustrating because the first part of the quest with the chatbot had taken more than 8 minutes. And I know this because I did time it, because I'm that person who times things. And then I was waiting a long, long time with the human trying to get this answer. So finally I was like, well, I'm going to take my chances on the phone. I'm going to see if I can get through. And sure enough, I got through and I said, I have a really simple question. What does this fee mean? And the person was able to look at my statement and say, oh, you're right, that's a mistake. Now, of course, this was after I repeated my information for a third time. I verified who I was, all of those things for a third time in order to get an answer to this question. And I share this because I think it's kind of indicative of a lot of the experiences that we have had as customers so far with AI. We have equated these types of things with, you know what, this is why we can't let the robots take over. And I've actually heard that from some people. So I really believe in the power and the opportunity around what artificial intelligence and machine learning and these amazing tools and technologies, what they can actually do for a customer experience. I really believe there is a place for them. But it's just like anything else. We have to think about it from a strategic point of view. We have to understand that it's a tool, it's something to leverage. It's not something to just drop into your customer's journey and hope for the best. So what if we could do this? What if we could create experiences that were actually better and more personalized for customers using AI and machine learning? And how do we as the humans have to play a role in that and make sure that we're doing this the right way? That's what I want to talk about today. So the right way to deliver, to use AI in your CX program, these are a few of the things that we're going to talk about that will hopefully help guide. And again, I am not a programmer or anything like that. So this is really about that higher level of thinking around strategy. So first of all, you have to know why you're doing this, why your company is doing this. You also have to know why your customers would want this. What is in it for them? And then what can AI offer your customers, and what happens when that doesn't deliver? Are there kind of these trapdoors that can happen, and are you prepared to really help a customer through those episodes when maybe it's not delivering what we promised? And like everything else, your customer journey will evolve. So we need to really consider, how can we make sure that these AI opportunities evolve with that customer journey and not just kind of stagnate and become something that customers have to get through. And then we really have to face the challenges of AI leadership. So let's talk first about your company why. AI is a tool, right? It's something we need to leverage. So a lot of times what I've heard is I'll be in meetings with executives and they'll say things like, AI is so exciting. We need to get AI here. We need to make sure that we are, best in class in delivering AI experiences. And when I ask that question of why, a lot of times they have to think about it. They haven't thought about that question yet. So the first place I like to start, and you guys have heard me say this before, is what is your customer experience mission? What are you really trying to do for customers? Because that should guide you. That should make sure that you are using that as your North Star. And if you say that you want to make your customers' journey effortless, then where would AI help that? Well, AI might help in the way that it can be real time when your service agents are sleeping or when you've got different time zones or all of these things. Maybe that's something where AI could really help you do that. But make sure it's part of your bigger strategy and that you understand that why in order to guide how you introduce this into the customer journey. And then also know your customers why. Why would they want to use this? Why do they see this as an advantage? And share that with them. So there has to be a lot of transparency here because just like my experience with that chatbot, if I didn't know that that was a chatbot, that would have been even more frustrating because I would have thought I was dealing with a human who just wasn't getting this at all. You have to be really transparent about we are using this in order to serve you in a faster way, in order to provide more options for you, to make sure that we are giving you the best information we can in the quickest possible way. But go ahead and be transparent about that and share the why with your customers. But make sure that you're not only understanding the business why, but again, you're flipping that script and making sure you're looking at this from the customer's perspective and thinking about what's in it for them. So here's a big question that comes up because if it doesn't work the way we think it will, and the beauty of machine learning, and this is why I think it's so fascinating and so amazing. Machine learning is exactly what it sounds like. The machines start learning with more interactions. They start understanding that, when somebody asks for towels at the pool, if you're in a hotel, that means they want to know if they're available. They want to know where they are. They start understanding all of these different things. But if we are in that situation as a customer and then we don't get the answer we need, we're not getting that service, how are we making sure that there's an option for the customer in that moment? Because if there's not that escape hatch for a customer to say, you know what, I need help from a human being, then it gets really frustrating. And then they are in that cycle that I described where they have to repeat themselves. They have to go through all of these hoops in order to get something simple done. And so it actually sours the experience instead of making it better. So if we are really understanding what in this moment is AI providing for our customers, what is the ideal experience for them, and what happens if that doesn't happen, if they can't deliver, if the customer just needs help in a different way, and it's a nuanced situation and they need that human, how can we instruct customers in that moment so that they know their options? Because it's really frustrating to be in a channel and be stuck. And a lot of what we're doing to customers lately is we're assigning them certain channels and saying, stay there. That's not how customers act. We hop from device to device. We are interested in, reading maybe on a laptop where the print is easier, but then we want to go to the app for something else. So we need to make sure that we're giving people all those little kind of escape routes throughout their journey. And then this one I have seen over and over where, and you guys have heard me talk about this too, but customer journeys are not stagnant. Just look at the past few months. Look at how many organizations went through digital transformation in record time. All of a sudden, they decided that every experience had to have a digital experience and it had to be integrated with their customer journey, and they were going to make it happen. And so they did because they had to. So that sort of evolution, we can't just act like, okay, well, AI, that chatbot's working great. We're just going to let it go and kind of not worry about it. It has to evolve with us. As your customer experience evolves, as you offer new services, as you have different ways of offering support or different ways to really provide workarounds for customers or anything like that, that has to be considered when you go back to these AI tools, because otherwise they're going to give old information. And so we have to think of them almost like an employee. Like, what do they need to know? How can we train them? How can we make sure they have the information they need in order to deliver to customers throughout? So evolution is huge. And then there are real challenges around this. And not all of them are easy, and not all of them are something that you can really solve quickly. It takes a lot of thought and a lot of care. But the biggest one is data. There is a huge challenge right now if you don't have centralized data. And I see so many organizations that are struggling with this still. And as we get closer to that, the experience will be better. So for instance, that example I gave you of, I gave the chatbot all my information. I gave the human all my information in the chat box. Then I had to do the same thing when I called in. Part of that is because they're working separately. They're not really working together and having that clear 360 view of the customer. So data is a huge, huge thing. Siloed data makes this really challenging. Another thing is siloed leadership. If you are developing an AI tool over here and an AI solution over there for customers, and they're not really the same, and they're not really consistent, and they're not connected for that customer viewpoint, then that can be really troubling and frustrating as well, not only for the customer, but also for your organization. And so look for ways you can centralize the leadership around the customer journey and make sure that you're really looking at things from that customer journey. And then your employees need some reassurance. They need to know that just because you're introducing these types of tools and technology, you're not letting the robots take over. You're not going to, turn everybody into a robot. We need humans. We absolutely need humans in order to make this work. And so reassure your employees that this is not about the robots taking over. This is about offering new ways of doing things. We need humans who can do more around those nuanced situations with customers. So the more that your employees can really understand the customer experience, then they're really there to help deliver. And so make sure that there's a lot of reassurance, a lot of training. And part of that training is how they can use these tools. Because one of the best ways I've seen AI used is in contact centers, where if I'm an agent, I have all of this information at my fingertips in a really quick way to serve the customer who I'm talking to or chatting with. And if they don't have the right training on that, that can be very frustrating for them. So the whole idea of introducing these things and then just kind of hoping for the best, it doesn't really serve anybody. Think about it as, how can we engage our employees? How can we reassure them? How can we train them? How can we make sure that they have what they need in order to make this work for the customer? And if that's, simple reassurance that, what, the bots are going to help us answer all those questions that we get all the time that don't really require that human, but you are going to play a really important role because now you're going to be dealing with the people who really need you. That can be really empowering to people. So make sure that you're talking through this as much as you can with your employees and creating a culture around it, creating a culture that you're there to serve the customers. And this, like everything else you do in customer experience, it's about them. It's about the customers. It's not because it's cool technology. It's not because it's a huge cost savings, even though eventually that could be the case. Make sure that you're really talking about customers first. So these are the things that I've seen. I'm sure you guys have also had some experience here. So I would also love to hear from you and learn from you. So if you've had experiences that you want to share in the chat, we'll talk about those too. But, at this point, we'd love to open it up to questions and see what we've heard from everybody.
Yeah, and so I'm going to kick off the questions with a comment, and then we'll lead that directly into the questions. So Tyler added a comment here. and I think it's right on, that journey maps are a great way to think about how AI interacts with your current intended CX, and make sure that the when, where, and why of how you use it aligns properly. It's also good for designing a backup plan for your AI.
Amen.
So with that comment in mind, we've got our original question that came in from Rakesh at the beginning,
I'm gonna
which
I'm gonna I'm gonna comment on that
oh
first
yeah,
before we
please.
get to questions, because that's a great point. So there are two things I would say about that. One is, I love journey maps, so I love that. So thank you for bringing that up. I totally agree. And I also think that service blueprints can be really effective here too. Service blueprints is when you're mapping out what the customer sees, but then you're also figuring out how to get there with the back end, with the processes, the systems, the employees. And so that could be a really helpful way to map this out as well. But I think the contingency plans are super important to map out as you're introducing this, especially. So great point, Tyler. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. And so along those lines, Rakesh asks, any templates for CX journey mapping? And what comes to my mind is the, let's see here, the case study in action,
Mhm.
LinkedIn Learning course. Jeannie, can you talk a little bit more about
Sure.
what's included in that?
Sure. So the first course I did with LinkedIn on journey mapping was kind of an overview course. And a lot of people ask this question, like, okay, now what? And so we created a follow up course where we literally walk through it, and there are some templates in there and things like that. So hopefully that helps. There are some tools out there as well that can guide you through that. I mentioned CX Workout before, UXpressia. I always say it wrong. Sorry. They have some templates as well. So there are some different tools. Even Miro, I noticed, has some journey mapping templates as well. So you can start with some of those. But whenever I'm asked about templates, I always say, like, don't start with the template, start with the strategy. What do you want to do? Who do you want to ask? All of those things. So if you go to that LinkedIn course, it literally walks you through those steps. So hopefully that'll help.
Cool. And yeah, so if anybody doesn't have a LinkedIn Learning account yet, LinkedIn Learning offers 30 days free when you get started. So that's plenty of time to get through that this weekend. You also mentioned the customer service blueprinting. So I'm just going to throw that one up too. If you finish the first course and you're like, I need more stuff to learn. Common problem for all of us, of course. Let's bring it over to the next question. So let's see here. Yugashri, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but she asks, who's doing AI well today? And if you can't go into specific examples of who's doing it well, maybe what are some of the core characteristics of companies that are doing AI well right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is an interesting question, because there are so many different uses for it that it's hard to say, like, this is the perfect use. But one of the things that I am actually excited about where I'm seeing it is in healthcare. There are some really interesting ways that AI can help doctors and healthcare professionals understand data in a faster way. So instead of kind of paging through charts and trying to put things together that way, AI can allow them to see things, see trends, see certain things that are not always as accessible if you're just, reviewing charts and trying to take in all that data on your own. So that's one thing where I'm seeing a lot of cool potential around it that could really help the patient experience, and also help just help kind of humanity. I think that's really exciting. So that's one. The other is there are some retailers who are actually leveraging this really well, and kind of all of those ways that we've been trained in some ways with all those little suggestions we get of, since you bought this book, you might like this book, you might like that one. A lot of those things are becoming more and more personalized because of AI and because of centralized data. So there are organizations that are able to really see the customer individually in a way that was really challenging before, when we were just humans and we were just using machines and they weren't learning. And so now with all of this cool stuff, we're seeing more personalized customer experiences. And I think that's the irony here, is that there's a lot of fear around this stuff, and people saying, oh my gosh, we can't go down this path because it's all about numbers and it's all these things. But in a way, we're offering a more personalized experience when we leverage this technology in the right way. So that's another way that I think we're all benefiting from that, even if we might not recognize it as AI.
Awesome. So the next question that we've got feeds into this really well. That's kind of a counterpoint. This one's from Sarah. Can you think of certain businesses or industries that shouldn't use AI for customer interactions? Or is it more about the right execution and strategy behind it?
That's a great question. I think, I read an interesting case study a few months ago, and this was before the whole kind of coronavirus world that we're living in. But it was about learning, actually, and it was about how to really reach out to parents and help them with their students. And the reason it was interesting was because AI was doing what we want it to do as far as personalization and understanding data in a quick way and all those things. But some of the parents were really upset. And it was because it just was not executed in the right way. It didn't feel individualized. It didn't feel like there was a human on the other side of it. And so I think we have to be careful about things like that. If we're dealing with family, if we're dealing with personal information, if we're dealing with education or our children's well-being, we interact differently. And, I'm a parent, and I know I do that, where we have a more critical eye towards things that are affecting our children. And we are really hypersensitive to privacy issues and things like that. So I think that I'm not sure I would paint any industry as wrong or right with this. I would say, though, that if you're not thinking through really what the customer experience is and what some of those challenges might be, and inviting them into this process instead of just kind of imposing it on them, then that's where I would think you could run into some real issues. So I would say it's all about strategy and execution and thinking about the customer perspective.
Great. And we've got a comment here from Leslie that blew my mind.
Hi,
I've been
Leslie.
doing research on it here. So she says, "Hi, Jeannie. I'm jumping in with a random fun fact about getting LinkedIn Learning free." This is what LinkedIn Learning doesn't want you to know. If you're in the US and you have a public library account, you can enroll in any courses in the entire catalog of LinkedIn Learning for free.
That's
Um,
amazing.
I somehow had never heard of this.
And Leslie is a fellow LinkedIn Learning instructor. She has some
Oh,
wonderful courses on plain writing, on business writing, things like that. She's a wonderful instructor. So I highly recommend that. So yeah, let's put that link out if we can, because that's really,
yeah.
really helpful. Thank you for sharing.
So Leslie added this link here, but I don't know if we can click on it. If you're in LinkedIn, you can probably click on the link in the comments, or at least copy it. And then we can follow up as well with an announcement later. But that's really, really great. So
That is great. Thank
if you're
you.
in the US and you have a library card, go watch all of Jeannie's courses and all
And
of Leslie's
Leslie's.
courses for free. Let's jump to a question that came from email. Any tricks to getting cross-functional buy-in and getting everyone on the same page? It seems like the more stakeholders involved, the harder it is to get a commitment to anything new.
Yeah. Cross-functional support is one of the key ingredients to successful customer experience programs. And yet, it's one of the biggest challenges. So here's what I always say. If you can, first of all, look at what the overall organization is trying to do. What are your big goals? What are your key performance indicators? What are people held accountable for? So for instance, if the goal is to get X number new customers in a year, then start tying what you're doing with CX in general back to that big goal so that other people understand that by working with you, by actually creating a cross-functional leadership team, then focused on CX, that you all benefit from that. And so when it comes to AI and things like that, these are investments, right? We have to make sure that we're getting the return on that investment. So if you're suggesting taking on part of your journey and adding to it by introducing AI or machine learning options, then make sure that you have a case for that on how you'll gain that return, not just from a customer experience metric standpoint. So it's not enough to say, well, this will help us increase our net promoter score. That's not necessarily the language that other leaders speak. So really look for what are the language points that they speak. So your CFO is probably interested in cost savings. So make that case for cost savings, and then track that and show those results and make sure that they're aware of what's happening. The other people on that cross-functional team, marketing might be all about new customers or might be all about brand awareness or referrals. And so start tracking that. Make sure that you understand that, if we increase our NPS by one jump, then that might mean that we could increase our referral rate by 2%. What would that do for your organization? That can bring in millions of dollars in some cases. So start really working those angles of, if we do this, does that translate to results for the overall business? And I had a conversation with a CX leader about this recently where we were talking about how challenging it is. Like when you think about the job description of a CX leader, there are all these different skill sets you have to have. And they're both kind of that right brain and left brain function. And not everybody is good at everything. I'm not necessarily a great numbers person. I don't really get excited about spreadsheets. And yet I have to sometimes work that muscle and make sure that I really have a grasp on those numbers and that data in order to tell the story I want to tell, in order to get the results that I want to get. And so I think it's totally fair to, supplement that leadership with people who are good at certain skill sets. Some people are great storytellers. Some people are great numbers people. You might need a great project manager on your team, but look for how can you really speak the language of those other leaders in order to make this case, and then keep them engaged. Keep them engaged. I've seen one CX leader I know created an internal NPS program that she was kind of doing covertly for herself to see if she was gaining engagement with other leaders. So every once in a while, she would ask him, "How well do you think we're doing? Would you recommend that other companies handle their CX program this way?" And she would literally create an NPS program on if they were satisfied and if they would recommend this. So it gave her a gauge of how well she was doing. I saw another CX leader create an internal storytelling device. It wasn't really a newsletter. She didn't want to call it that, but essentially it was, these are customer stories we're hearing. And oh, by the way, did you know that thanks to all the hard work from the digital team, our website satisfaction score went up, and that translated to this. So she really went out of her way to tell a story about how those leaders were contributing to the customer experience, and then how they were gaining the results that the business cared about. But it can become almost a full-time job. And so what I always recommend is, start small, start with the leaders you have to influence in order to keep going, in order to get the investments you need, and then start expanding that circle and look for your deputies. You have people among you who are in those different departments who are truly dedicated to customer experience. They get it. Look for them and bring them into the fold. I've seen this with some brown bag lunch opportunities, some volunteer opportunities, and really showcase what customer experience work can do, that it's not just a nice to have. It's a business discipline. It's a strategy. It's something that helps the overall business. That could be a whole other webinar, and maybe it will be. There's a lot to say on that.
Yeah. All right, I'm adding it to the list. We've got a follow-up question from Yugashri that I really love. She asks, who should own the AI journey?
Oof.
Yeah,
The robots. No.
somebody else.
Robot overlords. Yeah, this is such a good question, and I wish I had an answer. I've seen it where it's been owned by digital, kind of digital leadership, tech leadership. I've also seen it where it's owned more by customer experience or even marketing. And I think the question becomes, who owns the customer journey? And this is a hard one throughout different organizations as well. So the important thing is it's not really the AI journey, it's the customer journey. And so where AI fits into that is a bigger question. I think it requires some form of partnership with technology and with the people who will support that tech. That's truly important. But I also think that, you know, at the end of the day, this is about the customer journey. And so that's the focus that we need to have. And the leadership that, is overseeing that is who should really be responsible for the AI journey. Easier said than done.
Yeah. Here is a question from Heather. So Heather asks, seeing as the use of AI should be organic, given that CX is always changing, and technology is always changing in the case of AI, can you comment on the use and utility of predictive analytics you may have used to adjust the AI to move in step with the evolving customer journey?
Wow, this is a meaty question.
Yeah.
Good question, Heather. So predictive analytics are amazing, and they often they'll tell us a story that we didn't even know was there if we're really looking for them. So I really like to understand, what are the ways that I think about it. I don't know if everybody thinks about it like this, but I think about it as, okay, we've got data from the past, and that tells us certain things. That tells us behavioral things about customers. That tells us some of the ways that they've reacted to similar situations, almost like a precedent in law. And then we've got present, which is real time, and how we can look at that and make sure that we are responding in real time. And then the predictive analytics really help us plan for the future of, okay, how are we going to serve up the next step that makes the most sense for them? So I don't know if there are specifics around this I can speak to, but I do think that when we look at AI and we look at how to really think through that customer journey, there's so much that we can wrap our arms around and think, okay, we've learned, customers have told us through their behavior that they want this next step and it's not there. How can we provide that for them? How can we help them get there? They've also sometimes told us that they don't know what the next step is. And so helping actually look through all of that data, and that can be a big job, but really understanding that around, what is it that the customer actually needs next? And then how can we leverage the tools that we have available to serve that up? I'm not sure if I answer that quite right, but predictive analytics is a huge subject too. And it's really about understanding the data that we have available to us and then leveraging it as much as we can. But I'm going to think more on that one. I might get back to you with some other things, Heather.
I know specifically in ways that we've used AI and predictive analytics to direct the way that our AI goes. Is if we have a question that comes in twice, we can anticipate that that's something that more than two people are struggling with. It's just only two people are speaking up. So that's definitely an opportunity to think about, well, is there an automated learning path that we can put them on to take them and anybody else who's experiencing this and doesn't want to speak up through this learning path without having to rely on the time and the energy of the people on our team. So that's one idea that popped into my mind.
Yeah, that's a great point. And if you think about like the evolution of this is it used to be FAQs, right? Like if somebody asked a question twice, you would put it on your FAQ. And now, but that was totally up to the customer to dig through and find the information. And now we're able to provide we're able to look at the journey and understand the journey so much better, and understand that for one customer, they're going to be on this journey and have the next step and have that question. We know that. And so we can serve it up. We can serve up the information they need in that moment. And it's just so cool to think about how far we've come, I think, from just, pages long FAQs where somebody
Mhm.
had to dig through, where now we can predict what they even don't know they're going to ask. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Let's run to one more question that came in from email.
Mhm.
And unless anybody else has another question that they're working on right now, we'll make this the last one. This question from email reads, do you have any recommendations on how to set our real people up, sales team, support staff, etc., how to set them up for success during handoff from bot to human?
Mm. Yeah, it depends on a few things. The first one is that data question. Like, do they have visibility into what's happening with the customer in that moment? Because a lot of times they don't right now, and that's what causes the frustration. So if you don't know the answer to that, if you don't know if they have visibility into it, really look into that and figure out, is there a way that during that handoff they can gain that real-time view of what's happening with the customer. And the other I would say is, if you can't guarantee that, if your data just isn't set up that way and you can't really guarantee that, can you set up something where you can have enough transparency so that the salesperson or whoever is taking over, um, they're empowered to say, you know what, I understand. Maybe it's just all they know is that you talked to a bot or you went through something. Uh, I understand that happened. I'm going to tell you that I don't have, that chat record. So I'm going to ask you a few questions you may have heard before. I think being authentic about that is really important for customers. It kind of helps them understand the situation. It proactively kind of admits that we know this isn't ideal, and it helps people feel like they're not just kind of dropping out of the sky into the customer journey. They're acknowledging where they are with it. So I think those two things are the most important about those handoffs. And then, the humans have to be good about this too. Like, if the humans are not recording what's happening with customers, if they are not necessarily doing taking the steps that are required to make sure that the data gets input into the right places, then that can mess up the journey too. So we need to really reinforce that the steps we need to take to, record the transactions, to update records, whatever it is, those are very important as well. And then the bot will see that, the machines will see that and have the most updated information as well. So it really is a cycle, and it's about working together in order to make this better for the customer.
Wonderful. Well, if you've been on any of these before, or if you know Jeannie at all, you know that she loves feedback. So by all means, please go to bit.ly/let Jeannie know, and you can provide feedback on how this webinar went and how the webinars have gone in general, if you've attended more than one.
Hmm. And it's so good to see that people are attending more than one. And we love, if you just want to drop in based on the topic, or if you want to join us week after week, this is just something we do to provide value, to help people, really answer questions and do what we can. And I know I don't have all the answers. So if you have, comments or suggestions to me, I'm all for it. So as you know, we love feedback here. So take advantage of that. And let's wrap up here. I'm going to go ahead and, share that you can reach me in all these different places. We are always looking for hearing from you, connecting with you, whatever you want to tell us. We are interested in hearing. So please feel free to follow me and connect with me on LinkedIn and all of those different things. And next week, just as a reminder, we will be going back to Fridays. So next Friday, we're going to be talking about, we are in the middle of the year, folks. We are officially halfway through the year of 2020, which has been a year. I don't know about you guys, but it's been a year. And so we're going to talk about, okay, what is the second half? What do we have to think about for the second half of this extraordinary year? And I, again, do not claim to have all the answers, but I hope to at least, sit down and really think about with you, what are the things we do know and how can we really prepare in the best way for our customers and for the customer experience in general. So I hope you'll join us. Again, it's always great to see you guys. And if you are watching this on replay, of course, feel free to join us. Feel free to watch on replay as well. So I think that's it. My thanks, as always, to all of you, and also my thanks to David for helping us facilitate this. My goal, my mission is to create fewer ruined days for customers. And by joining this, I know you're on that goal with me and you're helping me live that vision. So thank you so much for that. So good to see everybody. See you next week. Happy holidays. Have a great holiday weekend to those of you in the States. And we'll see you next week. Thanks.